Hi everyone, I'm creating this video tutorial to guide you through the idea of calculating duration based on the information that we've got here. You're given a start time and you are given an end time, and what you want to appear in column C is the duration based on the start and end times given. Now, what I'm very quickly going to do is just convert this information into a table because I am a fan of using tables. You can use insert table, or you can use Control and T if you're familiar with that. Make sure that you've got this option. It probably will be ticked to say that my table has headers, and then click OK. And obviously, one of the good things that you can do is rename that table. I'll call it TBL duration just for the purposes of this tutorial today. I also want to mention the fact that I've got two end times in here that are basically midnight. So when we're calculating the duration, we need to be aware of the fact that they're reading as 00 as opposed to reading 24 in kind of 24-hour time speak. Excel's really not very capable of working with 24. It always converts it to 0, and quite often if you're pulling information through from a different source, it will pull it through as zeros. So we're not going to worry about that too much at this moment in time. What I am going to do though is I'm just going to highlight both of this data and this one as well, actually, where we're expecting the duration to appear, because I don't want to see the seconds that I can see appearing in the end of the duration, in the end of the time zones here. So what I'm going to do is go to the Home tab, and I'm going to click on this little button to actually launch the number format dialog box. If you're familiar with Control and 1, that will do the job for you as well. I'm going to go straight to where it says Custom. And in here, I'm going to ask Excel to use HH:MM. And then I'm going to click OK to that option, and that will immediately get rid of the seconds that we don't need to see. Now, because we're working with just two different times here, the duration is going to be between 0 and 24 hours. So I don't need to worry about using square brackets on hours or anything like that. Now, this should work very similar to how just subtraction would work with decimals. If I do equals the end time minus the start time, and you can see those structured named references appearing because we've converted our data to a table, that technically should work until we get to that one at the end where it's obviously looking at zeros. And that's why we're getting hashtags. Normally hashtags mean that Excel can't load all of the numbers, but that's not the case here. We're running into deeper problems. So the way that I want to explain this is I'm just going to go back into that custom format. Well, not custom format, but number format. If I choose time and I ask Excel to show me whether or not these 24-hour time zones are being represented by AM or PM, you'll see what's happening. So we've got some that are running PM to PM, some that are AM to PM. We might even have some, no, we don't have some that are running AM to PM. But the problem that I've got with these two at the bottom is that 24 hours, midnight, is represented as an AM time frame, whereas this time zone is a PM. So it's actually sort of interpreting that 24 hours as being in the morning. So therefore, it's struggling to take away 11:45 at night from 12 o'clock in the morning. And that's why we're running into problems. Now, there's a way around this, and it uses something called an if statement. I'm just going to take that back to those hours and minutes that we had before. I don't need to see the AM and PM. I was just letting you know why it was running into problems. I'm going to delete what we've got there. In fact, I'm going to delete all of what we've just calculated. And I'm just going to focus on popping my if statement in this place here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that wide because the if statement is going to be quite wide. There's going to be quite a lot going on. And I want all of the if statement to be displayed in this cell so you can see it clearly. When I've eventually finished this if statement, I'm going to be lucky enough to be able to drag it up to the other time frames that we've got for start and end above this particular problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my FX on the formula bar, ask Excel for an if. It is on my list, but it might not be on yours, which is why I'm searching for it here. Clicking on go, then it'll appear in my list and your list, and then we can double click it. Now, what I want to kind of calculate, and I'm just going to pop that dialog box there so that I can use it a bit like a ruler, just to remind myself that I only want to really focus on row 10, because that's where I want my answer to appear here. Now, my logical test is a question about one cell, and just for information, if statements can only ever be a question about one cell. And I want to ascertain, in fact, my question is about the start time. I want to know if that start time is actually greater than the end time. That is my question. I'm trying to work out, is it greater than? So that 23 hours and 45 minutes is greater than midnight, because that's midnight being interpreted first thing on a morning. And that's the problem that we had with the PM and AM. So if I can just ask Excel to tell me, am I going to run into a problem? That's what this logical test is going to help me decipher. Am I going to run into a problem? Is it going to interpret that as being a bigger time than 0 midnight? And you can see straight away that Excel's told me that is true for row 10, which is great. Now, if it is true for row 10, or any row, hypothetically speaking, what I want to actually do is take that end time and add 1. Now, this is a tiny, tiny bit complicated. By adding 1, it'll force it to turn it into the next day. So rather than it thinking that it's midnight on the same day as 23:45, it will now add 1 and interpret that as being midnight the next day, which will force that midnight to be better interpreted for that 23:45, because it will be midnight after 23:45. However, if that isn't the case, as is the case with all of these other rows here, let me just move that over, as is the case with all of these other rows here, because they were all perfect, there was no problems with those. So if that is the case, what I actually want to do is just display the end time. So hypothetically speaking, if I'm not going to have a problem, the current end time that is all in the other rows was fine for what I needed to do. Now, I am going to click OK at this point in time. I won't get exactly what I need yet, but I'll get something. What I also need to do, in addition to that, is just finish the calculation. Now, if you remember earlier on, it was end time minus the start time. So it's minus start time that I'm currently missing. What I've done here is I've interpreted these different time zones into the correct days. These are now the midnight after 23:45. These ones are all the original end dates because they were all fine. I hope this is making sense. So what I'm going to do, where I've got that if calculation, and I've gone to my formula bar for this. In fact, I'll come down here because it'll be a tiny bit bigger to see. What I'm going to do at the end of that if statement where you've got that closed bracket is I'm just going to continue that idea of minus the start time. Now I'm going to click on the tick and you'll see straight away that it's interpreted quarter to midnight, up to midnight as 15 minutes, and it's interpreted 22:30, 10:30, up to midnight as 1 hour 30. So these two are now correct. All of the others were fine anyway. I haven't actually changed them in any way, shape or form. What I've done is I've popped an if statement in to just kind of catch any errors where it runs into midnight or indeed past midnight, because this might have been 23:45 up to 1:15 in the morning, and that would therefore calculate that as 1 hour 30. This is easier to interpret if I put that as like a similar time to calculate in your head, 2 hours ahead. So that will now work. I'm just going to do a quick undo to take that back to what it should say. And then obviously I can kind of change the width of that duration column. And that should solve that problem.